morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Q&A session. I am really excited to have you here and really looking forward to the group of panelists that we have with us today. This morning, you are going to be hearing from speakers that presented in numerous sessions. So the mental health and well-being session, the rise of the resilient and balanced healthcare leader, and also the session on difficult patients, de-escalation in the dialysis unit. I'm Jessica Farrell, the Senior Manager of Social Work Services at Renal Research Institute, and I am pleased to go around and have everyone introduce themselves to us this morning. So Felicia, I will start with you.
Yes, my name is Felicia Speed, and I am the Vice President of Social Work Services with Fresenius Kidney Care. I've been with the company for 21 years. I just look really great for my age, but yes, so I've been around for a while. Absolutely love what I do and glad to be here. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Troseth, and I am a nurse, and I'm the co-founder of Missing Logic. I'm here along with my partner, Tracy, who will introduce herself in a minute. But we have been working together in healthcare transformation for over 30 years. So we have a lot of experience together, and we founded our company, Missing Logic, in 2018. And we really work with leaders to help have them have resilient, balanced, and thriving lives.
Thank you. Tracy?
Hi, I'm Tracy Christopherson. I'm a respiratory therapist by profession and a co-founder of Healthcare's Missing Logic with Michelle.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. Anne?
Hey, I'm Ann Pugh, and I'm patient services at the ESRD network in California. We cover Hawaii and all the islands like American Samoa and Guam and Saipan. And pretty much we do quality oversight over dialysis. We work with CMS. And I've been in dialysis also for 21 years. Word up, hey. I also look great for my age, as you can see. And I'm really thrilled to be here. A lot of what we do at the network is kind of, I've been joking lately that I'm the drama queen. I help with drama. Patients call me with drama. Facilities call me with drama. So glad to be dramatic here with you guys today.
Well, welcome to everyone. We are super glad to have you. So I thought perhaps one of the best ways to start off our time together with you guys and with our audience was really to kind of get from each of you maybe one key takeaway that we as providers in the dialysis field could leave with as a result of watching your session. Kind of what's one thing that you really want us to think about when it comes to blending all these topics together, whether it's the mental health and well-being, resilience, and our work with patients in the units.
Do I get the first one?
Yes, you sure do. It's you.
Oh, lucky me. All right. Well, I think if I had to choose one thing out of the hundreds and thousands of things I can think of, I think probably it would be most important to remember to do something to reverse the lack of autonomy that patients feel. Our patients, they don't tell us often, but they're really scared. And dialysis itself is very disempowering in a way, especially in in-center dialysis. And I think anything where you can give them a chance to kind of take more control or feel in control, such as asking permission, even asking to educate. Hey, is it a good time to talk to you about phosphorus? Is it okay if I move your jacket over here? All those things kind of have to dispel that the power dynamic that the professionals have of our patients that are literally tied to chairs doing a treatment that's really not fun, that they don't have a lot of choice about. So I think kind of asking permission also kind of helps cement consent. If someone says to you, I'm here to get my car serviced at that moment, you may want to slow down and figure out what you're going to do next. So I don't know, I think getting consent in everything you do in dialysis, even education, will kind of stop things from getting worse.
Thank you. What do you think, Felicia?
Thank you. Sorry, I had to pause for a second. I really think just remembering that our patients are human, that they're not a lab number. They're not even all of their behavior. When we look at non-adherence and things of that nature. You know, they're not all the labels that we apply to them, but they're actually simply human, and they're living they're on a journey just as we're on a journey as well. And they have emotions just like we do, and they process things very similarly. And so just understand that when they walk through those doors, they're coming in with more than that big blanket and their books and their snacks they hiding up under the blanket and the bag. They're coming in with more than that. They have a wealth of experience, and they know their life better than we've known them. They've lived it longer than we've known them. We are a part of a snapshot of their life, and is what we can do to it. So look for ways to contribute to that, and just look for ways to be patient with them, and also being patient with yourself, and we giving each other space to be empowered, to be encouraged, and to make mistakes along the way. I think the more we do that, and we don't put that perfection on ourselves, then we won't impose that on others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, Tracy?
Well, I can go. I think one of the things that I would say is to recognize that the tension we feel between taking care of ourselves and taking care of others is always going to be there. This is not a problem that you can solve. It's something that has to be managed, and you really have to be vigilant about it. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of effort. It just takes attention and intention. And that you can, that to manage that, you need to do both. And we tend to overemphasize caring for the others. It's kind of, Michelle and I like to say, it's in our DNA, right? As clinicians and leaders. And so that's usually not the problem. It's not the challenge to take care of others. It's more the challenge of caring for yourself. So you can really start small with just one thing that's going to make a difference for you, and just give attention to it while you continue to care for others. And just taking that small step will get you a long way down the road, I think.
Yeah, and I would just...
Yeah, I sometimes... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would just add to that to also start now if you haven't been focusing on yourself. And with the burnout rates just continuing to escalate, it's so important each one of us just acknowledges now is the time, and not to put it off if you haven't really been giving that attention and intention that Tracy was referring to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I often kind of say, I mean, when we walk on the treatment floor, it's the same as walking into a hospital room. You need to take a breath and put on your Disneyland face and just kind of be there, you know, just kind of be there. And once you feel it starting to be about you, whatever's going on, it may be a good time to suddenly need to go to the bathroom, or to need to consult the doctor, or, you know what, I'll go talk to the nurse right now. One thing about the pandemic is it's gotten a lot of us out of the break room and maybe going outside and having a walk, or even just eating lunch in our cars. It's a moment to reflect and take a deep breath and perhaps kind of regain that equilibrium we need to do the work we do. It's hard work.
Absolutely. Those are all great tokens for us to take back with us. One of the things that we're going to be talking about this morning in our session is really, you know, we're going to talk about burnout, and we're going to focus a bit on our own self-care. I want to encourage everyone that, you know, this is a Q&A. You have these experts at your fingertips. So I want to encourage you that if you do have questions or things that came out of any of the presentations that you're curious about or want more information about, we welcome you to put it in the chat, and I will absolutely read it out, and we will go from there. While we're waiting for those to come in, I wanted to start with you, Felicia. Appreciate your great presentation that we're all off the heels of just watching. And one of the things I really appreciated your focus on prevention. And you talked a lot in your presentation about, you know, us as providers really thinking about what is it that I need. I have to tell you, your suggestion of 1 hour a day of unplugging really gave me a lot of pause. I don't know, it likely gave others a lot of pause to really think about how powerful that could be. You also mentioned journaling and the importance of considering journaling and really talking about what we're grateful for. So I would love to get the chat started and just wanted to see if everyone that is with us today could perhaps mention one or two things that they're grateful for. It could be personal things. It could be something that you're grateful for that happened at work today, but would love to see the chat being utilized. So I'll wait for some of our answers to come in. I don't know if any of you all want to share, since you're not in the chat feature right now, one thing you're grateful for.
Well, I think I would probably say I'm really grateful for my dogs. I mean, because dogs have to be walked. And so there's really no option about kind of saying, oh, I'll just sit here and watch Netflix, or let me just do a little bit more charting. I'm almost done, really, ha ha ha, as though you're ever done. But, you know, so I think that the dogs are both wonderful companions, and they force you to kind of be outside of yourself and take care of them. And they never ask you, but really, how are you doing? Sometimes that can be a burden.
Anyone else? We have some people great with the chat. We have some comments about family, just being grateful for family, good working partner who gives me honest feedback, grateful to patients and their willingness to connect with me. Really powerful. Grateful for having the strength to be patient and having faith. For my health, family, and that I managed to get up in time to attend at 6 a.m. Pacific time. That's amazing. And Etta, grateful for my health and for my family also that I managed to get up. That's wonderful. Well, thank you all. Lots to be grateful for. And Felicia, I thought those were great words of advice and really things for us to think about, that there are tangible things that we can do.
Absolutely. I think, when we take the time to, it really does something for you internally. It allows you to be able to center yourself. I think it's an important piece of mindfulness, allowing yourself to be present in the moment. We can become just so overwhelmed and consumed with so many things that's coming at us. One of the things I've just really encouraged people to do is, take a break from Facebook or social media. One of the things I learned about it, not trying to down it or anything, but you can't control what you're going to see next. Right? When you're scrolling. So you're thinking, oh, I got some encouraging words. Oh, that was a funny video. And then boom, something happened. Someone was killed. Somebody died, and it's just like, you're not able to control what you're going to see next. So sometimes you just need to, do something that is predictable, So sometimes I just go play with my nephew. He's going to laugh eventually. So it's a predictable thing I can expect. So I think you have to go do some things that that is predictable, that you feel like, okay, I know I'm going to enjoy this. And I think, and that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to be able to spend time with my family and walk in the midst of the pollen and still survive and breathe. So I'm grateful for that as well.
Absolutely.
Grateful for Zyrtec.
Yes, me too. We do have a question that has come in, so I'm going to throw it out to our crew here. What tips can you give us to help our colleagues if we notice that they are looking a little stressed out? Sometimes we're not sure what to do.
I would kind of say, sometimes just kind of being nearby and helping without saying, do you need help, or implying that they're not doing a great job, but just kind of being present and try to figure out what they might need to kind of right themselves. When I used to work in the restaurant, like you ever been in a restaurant where you hear a big crash and the tray of glasses fall, and everybody's like, ooh, and the customers and everybody, we always used to have a rule that if that happens to you, somebody else has to clean it up so you can go in the back and get yourself better again. And I think in dialysis, if things happen, if we can kind of cover for ourselves in a minute like that, I think it would be amazing.
Let's say, I think just check in. Here's what I'm observing, and asking, are you okay? Right. And just giving people a chance to either acknowledge, no, I'm not, or actually I'm all right. Just don't assume, I guess. I would just check in and ask. And then, I would also ask, what would make the biggest difference for you right now? And, don't try to swoop in to rescue, but just to say, I'm here. What would make the biggest difference? And let them guide you on what they think would help.
I think that's a great point. I think so often we don't know what to say, so we don't say anything. And I think your point is well taken that it doesn't have to be a significant amount that you're saying, but really the acknowledgement.
Right. I think, I think sometimes we're afraid to ask because we're like, what if they say something and I can't fix it and I don't have an answer? Guess what? We don't need you to have one. I don't necessarily even need you to fix it. I just need an ear. I don't need your mouth. I just need an ear. There's nothing more frustrating than someone cutting me off halfway through and wanting to give me all these solutions. I can usually come up with my own eventually. Just let me talk. And so I think, and letting them know, hey, I don't have any answers for that. And that's okay. And I think if we take the pressure off ourselves, then we can help others that are stressed out by just simply listening and being present.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there was something I learned. I was attending the nursing home huddles early on with IHI just to kind of see what nursing homes were up to. And there was one thing that they thought about, which is something they called Take 5. And it's the idea that at any moment, anybody could say, I need to take 5, and the other rest of the team would kind of coalesce around them. Again, it's kind of a writing kind of thing when things are hectic on the floor, or if you're just suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. Because I think it's really important for our patients to see that we're coping. The minute the patients see us fall apart, and you better believe our patients are watching and listening and taking notes and theorizing, they start to really get worried. So it's like if you feel yourself kind of overwhelmed with a wave of emotion, I think this is more so earlier on pre-vaccine, but having kind of that option to kind of do a quick escape valve, even in dialysis, I think it can work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was a great question. Thank you for bringing that forward. And to all others, feel free to send questions our way. I wanted to turf over to Michelle and Tracy. You guys definitely led an awesome presentation about resiliency, and you had some really compelling points about taking care of others and also taking care of ourselves. And, both I feel are very important. I think from the start of the pandemic, we in dialysis really were and always have been all hands on deck. And we, ran towards something that we really didn't know what we were getting into. And more often than not, it meant putting others first. It meant putting others first, longer hours, weekend hours, working all night. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts for us on how to rebalance. We've been in this for so long, and you talked about the burnout. What advice would you give to us listening about perhaps some small steps we can take to try to realign that balance?
Yeah, sure. I can start, and then Michelle, you want to add in. Well, I think first to recognize you're not in balance. And sometimes, right, we don't even recognize that we're struggling with something like this. And so I think that's the first thing. And you're right, this is very prevalent. And that's why Michelle and I actually created like a Caring for Others Without Neglecting You self-study program that we're launching next week. And it's you start with what's my biggest deficit right now. So I think that's always a great place to start, is where can I gain the most by taking one action. So if I take one action, how can I, really get the most for caring for myself? And like I said earlier, it's usually not a problem in caring for others. We're really pretty good at that. But starting with what's my biggest deficit that I need, and maybe it's, sleep. Maybe sleep is something that you are, having some problems with sleep. So maybe you would want to just set a goal around, I want to be in bed at a certain time every night, and this is a habit I want to create. And, kind of monitoring and tracking yourself around that. But even just one thing, getting sleep, can make such a significant difference in how you're showing up in the rest of your life. So that's what I mean by choose one thing that you really think will make a big difference and kind of go for that. It can be really overwhelming to try to think of the whole if you don't have a good structure and framework for that. And that's something that, we often provide the individuals that we coach is kind of a blueprint for how to manage this. But if you're trying to just do it on your own, that's something I would say. And then the other thing is check your beliefs. Yeah. Because your beliefs are going to influence your actions. And if you believe I'm a servant leader and everybody needs to come first, it's going to be really difficult for you to step into caring for yourself to the degree that you need to balance that out. So I would say, I would check your beliefs and how can you maybe shift some of the beliefs that are limiting you to something that might be empowering you. Like one of the key beliefs that we have is you can't pour from an empty cup. So I can't be my best self and caring for my patients or others if I don't have a full cup and I'm not caring for myself so that I can be the best that I can be. So just those subtle shifts can really make a big difference in choosing that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Michelle, is there something you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add, you can learn so much from your colleagues. So we work with leaders from across the country, and it's so amazing how much they learn from each other. So even in your circle of influence, or, you know, as you network with colleagues around the country, ask them what they do to take care of themselves, because there's things you haven't even thought of that can be really simple that can help you just by sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah, such good points. When we talk, so we've talked a lot about mental health, or some about mental health of ourselves. I want to switch over to Anne. You brought up some great points about asking permission and how that can benefit the mental health of a patient as well. And I'm just curious, you know, I think often as healthcare providers, we're so busy, you know, we have 50 million things that we're thinking of doing, and asking permission isn't always something that's at the forefront. Can you give us some examples in the unit or talk about times when asking permission would really benefit a situation and what it would look like?
Well, I mean, I think for education issues is a big deal. Things like if say, I mean, for instance, like if Felicia mentions weight loss, like if anybody wants to connect with me around weight loss, they pretty much, I mean, you can make an assumption that perhaps I might have been dealing with this for a minute because I'm not like 8, right? So if you want to talk to me about it, I would strongly recommend that you ask permission, because otherwise I'll be like, who are you? I mean, it's a loaded topic. It's something that I have a lot of history with. For all you know, I might be at the lowest I've been for years. So then you put your foot in it. So I think there's a fair amount of scolding and blaming in dialysis, and I'm pretty concerned about how that it makes patients feel bad, and it doesn't make anybody want to learn when you're feeling bad, if you're frightened, if you're not doing well. So I don't know. I remember, especially longer things. Like I remember once when I was newer, I sat down to do a KDQOL. That's the quality of life survey for anybody who doesn't know. From the social work stuff and dialysis. And I didn't ask the patient whether it was okay for me to sit down to do it. So here I am, like, you know, I had the sense to sit down, and I'm going along, and suddenly the patient's answering my question. She says, can you get me a bucket? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I realized that her blood pressure was dropping. She was getting ready to Ralph. And here I am. I didn't ask how she was feeling. You know, there were antecedents to it. It was near the end of the treatment. And I realized it was all about me. I was trying to get my deadlines done, trying to get my thing done. And I never said, hey, is this a good time? I mean, some of our patients may be on their favorite episode of I Love Lucy when we come over. And I just think it's just respectful. And it kind of helps kind of build a culture of respect for our patients' time. I think often we kind of assume that because the patient's there, that they're there to, we can do whatever we want with them. It's like that they are no longer people in a way. So I mean, I see people talking over patients. So I think that kind of thing is very, very important. I do get, and also when you are approaching a patient, like from behind or from the side, and the person may be sight impaired, I think it's very important to say, hey, I'm here, or hey, is it okay if I move you? Not only is it respectful, it can keep you safe. It's not, people have a tendency to kind of go, whoa, if somebody's coming at them too quickly. And it's a way to get hit. And if you've got needles in your hand, you're ready to cannulate, it can be bad. And it will be unintentional, but in a way, by not thinking ahead and letting the patient know what you're about to do or what you're doing, you're also keeping yourself safe and the patient safe, and that precious access safe, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Piggybacking off of that question, another thing that you had talked about in your session was really about the importance of boundaries and having clear and established boundaries. I know that in dialysis, and I know many of you listening to this have seen an increase in patients that are exhibiting behaviors that are challenging. And when you talk about boundaries and the importance of setting clear boundaries, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts for those that might be sitting there thinking, gosh, I'm realizing I really haven't been setting good boundaries with the patient. And I'm realizing that, the patient really is running the show and it is really creating complications. How would you suggest, what kind of advice do you have for us to suggest peeling that back a little and starting to set some of those boundaries again?
Well, I think, there's boundaries and there's setting limits. Now, boundaries are things like, for me, like perhaps not disclosing that I've got a sick grandchild, because that's something that's it's something about me. How is that going to help the patient social work relationship or nurse relationship? And then also can be used against me by some that are maybe not right mental health wise, or are jealous, or just kind of want to get me, say, so are you late because of that grandchild of yours? It can get really weird. So there's that personal boundaries, like personal sharing kind of thing. I have talked to people where patients have looked facility, like I talked to an FA once, patients looked up that FA's name and figured out where he lived, and they managed to see things on his Facebook feed, and that creeped him out. And that's not something that he could have controlled, but once it happened, it got really strange. So there's kind of that boundary kind of thing, and that's something where reminding everyone about keeping personal information to a minimum. I sometimes say, if you were talking to your favorite checker at Safeway, you might say, yeah, God, school, kids, man, I feel ya. You might kind of talk about that kind of thing. If it's something you would talk about with somebody at the grocery store, then maybe it's okay to talk about with your patients, to be careful of that. The other thing with boundaries and kind of things like limit setting is hard work. It's exhausting. Anybody who's ever raised a teenager, oh my God, it's like they hate you half the year, but you have to kind of hold fast because they know a lot, but they still need the limits of safety. So it's like you kind of have to, and that's something that's hard to do on your own. I think that's part of the reason why parents groups can be so great for raising children. But in dialysis, it's like if everybody's together saying, hey, this person is going to yell at us. If we say to them, you can't be yelling on the floor, you just hold up. We're not putting you on until we can talk to you straight up and do an assessment without your screaming, because it's not safe for everyone. And that's something where if you yourself have not been kind of setting that boundary and you've been putting that person on, or that limit, so you've been putting that person on, even though they're being abusive, just kind of focusing on dialysis, then you've given a message to that patient that it's okay to act that way on the floor. And then when others are trying to say to that patient, oh, heck no, an agitated patient that's being all mean and using profanity that I'm not putting you on, then that person has more of a hassle because you've allowed it to go. There's cultural issues here. There's size issues. Some patients are really terrifying because they're terrified. But I think one of the things you can do is kind of talk together as a group and say, hey, all of us, this is what we're going to do. And I think it's really helpful to role play. When I was younger, it was really hard for me to say anything gracious when somebody would maybe in a weird setting say, ask me out. I wouldn't kind of think to say, well, thank you, but I can't do that. I mean, it's helpful to kind of practice awkward conversations, things like, oh, hey, what's up? You can't be yelling. Hold on. How can I help you? And just kind of practice those phrases, because those are the glue that make people relax. And it's also part of assessment nurses, right? You hear somebody yelling, if you kind of, and all the other patients are listening. So they see, oh, look, that guy yelled, the nurse came over, said, how are you? And the person's like, well, I just hate life. It's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm going to give you a few and we can talk. We could always put you on later. We can dialyze tomorrow. But you might not even want to say that at that moment, just kind of interrupting the behavior. So it's kind of a long thing, but if you haven't been great at it, you're not alone with limit setting. Some limits and boundaries, it's not easy. So a lot of things, especially like sexual harassment kind of things, or asking things like, so does your boyfriend, is your boyfriend tall like me? It's just icky. So a lot of people, it's natural to kind of not want to deal with it. And you guys are moving fast on the floor, nurses. Your ratios are crazy. But at the same time, kind of taking time after that to talk with a social worker or maybe your FA or somebody, it's like, how do I deal with that stuff? Because you don't want to let it go. You don't.
Yeah. I'm noticing such a parallel. I'm imagining you are to Felicia, and you all in the audience. I know Felicia had also talked about this, that one of the best ways that we can support our patients and their mental health is to really be aware of the information that we are sharing with patients. And I think that's pretty powerful that as providers, we have such a strong hold on that. I mean, that's something that we can control. Any thoughts, Felicia?
Yeah, I know it's very easy because, we're like a small microcosm and,
yes.
We're seeing the same people 3 times a week. And, so it's very easy and we have that transference and countertransference that happens a lot. They remind you of somebody, so you start to just see them, as a friend, as an aunt or as a cousin. And so and they start to see you the same way. So you have a tendency to get very relaxed in the sharing. And, I'm from the South. And so we just, we say everything to everybody at the grocery store. So, it's sometimes it's hard, but, just learning to establish those boundaries and making sure you're consistent. I think the consistency is so important, and making sure that when you're establishing the limits, that it's not based on any biases that you may have, but it's something that you would do for everyone when setting those limits and setting those boundaries. And I think we have to come together and be in agreement. Like if we're not going to give patients food, we have to be in agreement that we're not going to do that. Patients love to feel like they're the favorite. And so they will play that for all it's worth. So I really just encourage, to do that and just always pause and just say, what am I setting a precedence with this? Am I setting a precedence? Is this something that I can maintain? We're letting people go back early. If their treatment time is at 11, why would you let them keep going back at 10:45? Because the one day you don't do that, now could possibly be a conflict. And guess what? It never happens on Monday through Friday. It always happens on Saturday when there's not anyone else there to help you. So you need
Fair enough.
They're always they're waiting for when there's no other support. Or it's the very first thing in the morning. And so, you need to just think about what you're doing and what precedents am I setting, and just be consistent, like be kind to all the patients. If you're spending 5 minutes with this patient, make sure you're going to be willing to spend 5 minutes with the patient beside them, because they're going to notice that you're spending more time with one more than the other. And that was something I had to learn when I first was a social worker, because I liked some of the patients more than I liked others. And so I had a tendency to talk to someone. But then I realized that how was I making the others feel? And then how was it affecting my rapport, my clinical relationship that I needed to have with them as well?
Yeah, that's a great point too, because dialysis, I always say it's like a fishbowl. Sometimes I feel it's like a stage. And so patients are watching. I can't tell you how many grievances I get where patients have come up with theories about, that person, she always talks to people of her culture more than me. So it's really important sometimes to be aware of the optics of things. It's a marketing idea. But when you've got this audience that all they're doing is watching and some are gossiping, even in my clinic, some patients were texting each other on the floor real time during that shift. I swear they would know when I'd lost 3 ounces earlier than I did, right? It was crazy. So, you can also use that to your advantage, though. If you kind of say something a little too loud, other patients are going to hear it and may react. You can kind of use the stage to kind of create what you want the floor to look like and what you will and won't tolerate. And also, anyway, I think that's a good thing. The other thing you also reminded me about is kind of checking oneself. Is this thing that I'm doing, is it something that benefits me, or does it benefit the patient-me relationship? Because some things we do, like letting people early, it's more about us trying to get to lunch early. And in the long run, you're absolutely right. We actually get grievances at the network about they always put me on late. And here I am going through, calling the clinic, and you know what the answer is, right? It's, so people are sneaking people in early because they want to get off early. So
yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Big one.
That was so powerful that we can help our patients' mental health in that way too. I just want to remind everyone, we have about 10 minutes left. So certainly if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can utilize time that way. I wanted to ask Michelle and Tracy, just kind of, we talked about patients. I want to shift back to us. We had some comments in the chat just really acknowledging and appreciating the focus that this conference has had on our own well-being. And one of the things that you guys very, very briefly mentioned, because I know you didn't have a lot of time in your talk, you talked about work-life balance, work-home balance. And, you know, again, as we've talked about, just kind of this work demand and really trying to shift and find time for ourselves. I'm wondering if there are any words you have for us about the importance of work-life balance, and not just the importance, I think we all know that, but really what to do about it, really how to get back to that place.
Sure. Well, I'll start and then Tracy, you can add in. I think, first of all, consider how you look at work-life balance. You know, one of the kind of myths out there is it doesn't exist because it has to be 50-50. So even challenge yourself, how do I look at work-life balance? And just like the self-other tension that we bring up in our presentation, the chronic tension between work and home is never going to go away. And so you really do need that dynamic balance of paying attention to what keeps me really strong at work and what keeps me really strong at home. And like Tracy mentioned, it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but try to identify those few things. You know, it might be developing a new habit at home, like I'm going to walk daily, and then putting your tennis shoes by your front door to remind you, you know, and then maybe something at work, just to kind of go on Anne's theme and Felicia's on limits and boundaries. Maybe it's, I'm going to stop myself the next time someone asks me to do the next new project and say no. It's okay to say no, because that helps with your dynamic balance too, right? And the other thing is we can really be driven by circumstances, and we can get caught up in that. And we have to realize there's never a good time to be perfectly balanced. We're always going to have these things come up in our lives as clinicians and as caregivers and leaders. And so to really recognize that, again, and that kind of has a little bit to do with me, say start now, because you can start now to really look at that. And we work with leaders on a work-life balance blueprint that they can actually fill out and look at every week. How am I doing with my blueprint? Is there any adjustments I need to make? Because I've been leaning a lot more towards work this week than I am at home. And sometimes that happens because maybe there's a big event happening at work. Or maybe, for example, you know, you have a child that's getting married and it needs a lot of your attention because the wedding's next week. And so you let go a little bit of work. But the key is you don't completely let go of one or the other. You always have those action steps that can help you do that. So, and Tracy, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I would just say get help. Like ask for support. You know, you have colleagues that can support you on the work side, and whoever in your personal life that can support you to help you maintain that balance. I think that's really important. Sometimes we think we got to go it alone, but you're not alone in it. And the more support systems you have in place to help keep you on track, the better off you are. Yeah. I would say also really identify why. Why is work-life balance important to me? What is that bigger purpose for maintaining that balance? Because that's what's going to pull you forward. And that's what you're ultimately trying to achieve by giving attention to work at home. So I think having that clarity really gives you that drive, that momentum, that pull, right, to keep going, to keep the balance in check. And then I think the other thing is early warning signs. We all know the early signs of when we're over-focused on work, or maybe we've given too much attention to home, you know, things people say to us, the way we start to feel, we often ignore them. So one of the things that's a part of our blueprint process is identify the early warning signs and then be vigilant about identifying when those are happening so you can make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some comments that have been generated in the chat, just really focusing on the fact that work-life balance makes happy employees, and happy employees make happy patients. And a discussion about, you know, a great point about it sounds like we as healthcare providers really need to be intentional about work-life balance, that it is something that just isn't going to come naturally, that it takes effort, and that it really takes some thought.
Yeah, you have to be intentional. You're right. Yeah. Or it won't happen. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left. I think I would love to just kind of stay in this conversation because I know that everyone in the audience just works so hard and really gives of themselves, that I'm just curious, Anne and Felicia, as we really work to wrap up, any other thoughts about this and just really the importance of our own being?
Well, Felicia, why don't you go first?
Sure, I don't mind. It's something that I've really learned to establish some non-negotiables. You know, what are some non-negotiables for me when it comes to my work-life balance? What are some things that I'm not willing to compromise on? And one that I'm learning is I'm not compromising on sleep. So thank you, Tracy. And then I'm not, going to compromise on my meals, like, not skipping lunch. My body deserves that. And I think we don't realize that that's self-care. Self-care is not an indulgence, it's a discipline. And so it's not about trying to go spend $500 at the spa. It's just about taking time to just do simple things for yourself. And don't stress yourself out about trying to have balance. Like, it's not supposed to stress you out. You should really kind of think of something that you want to do and just do that. But don't be like, oh my God, I got to create a schedule for work-life balance. Don't overthink it. Just find simple ways, as Michelle and Tracy said, find simple ways to do it. So thank you for letting me share.
Awesome.
Yeah, I thought of something that helps me is kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of in dialysis especially, everything's very fast. I mean, you try to get every minute of treatment. You try to get the best outcomes. I mean, and all of us probably are kind of, I'm sure we got lots of overachievers in this group. And one thing that I find for myself is to remind myself, and also others in my position, is, that the urgency, I think we can put pause on things. If I've got somebody on the phone who's just so overwhelming that I feel like kind of changing my careers, I can wrap it up and say, hey, this has been good, but would it be okay if we continue this tomorrow? And I can put it down, and I can even say, like, I need to think about what you said. And it's a way of kind of getting myself gracefully out of the situation and going back to it fresh, putting someone on hold briefly and going, and then coming back and saying, so wait, so we were talking about, it's all tricks to kind of slow things down so you can kind of get into that slower groove. It also will help with kind of how you come across and understanding. In dialysis, we're all so focused on we got to get every minute in that sometimes it's like, if the patient misses 10 minutes in the scheme of things, maybe you can even give it back at the end of the treatment. Don't scold them the second they come in. For all you know, in a half an hour, the next person may call in late. So just kind of say, hey, good to have you. We'll figure it out. And kind of get rid of the rush all the time when you don't need it. There's enough of times you do need it, right? In medicine, right?
Yeah. Wonderful thoughts from all of our panelists. It's hard to believe that we're wrapping up our session together. I just want to thank our panelists so much for the time and commitment you showed to us with your words. And I just want to thank the audience for joining and just really reminding the audience as they leave today that as everyone has supported, you need to fill your cup first. You are important. And with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks for all you do. Enjoy the rest of your sessions here at the conference.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice talking today. Thank you.
Thanks.